This is the Cool Photo Tools Podcast, episode number 57, March 7th, 2016.
Are you sick of trying to learn all the new photo software? Are you tired of hearing about the next big thing in photography? Well, neither are we. Welcome to Cool Photo Tools with Jay Piersdorf and Rhonda Spencer.
Today's sponsor is Audible.com, who has more than 180,000 audiobooks and spoken word audio products. Get a free audiobook of your choice at www.audibletrial.com/coolphototools. Good morning, cool heads. Welcome to another exciting episode of Cool Photo Tools. I'm Jay Piersdorf, and Rhonda Spencer is still enjoying her vacation this week, but she'll be back next week. I promise. She will be here with rested and relaxed and her usual bubbly, argumentative self, or something like that. So we've got a lot of cool photo stuff to talk about this week. We had a bunch last week, and I couldn't get through it all, especially since I didn't have Rhonda's help. So we're going to give that one more shot today. And first thing we're going to launch off and talk about here is that, anytime that you hear something on the podcast that you want to know more about, if you just go to our website, coolphototools.com, and click on podcasts, it will take you to the most recent podcast. And then we have show notes. We have links to all the items that we have talked about. And some of them are affiliate links. And we really especially appreciate that when you click on those if you're going to buy a photo item and you link to Amazon, for example, from our affiliate link. We very, very much appreciate that. Helps keep the lights on here at the Cool Photo Tools studio. All right, so let's get right to it. First thing I wanted to talk about today is a new neutral density filter from a company called Aurora Aperture at aurora-aperture.com. And this is neutral density filters are nothing new. We have seen neutral density filters. And for those of you that are new to photography, a neutral density filter is something you put on the front of your lens. And it's kind of like sunglasses for your lens. But these don't have any color to them, so they're neutral. They're kind of a gray or a black colored glass that you can see through, and it doesn't change the colors of a scene. It just cuts down the brightness of the light reaching the film or the sensor. And so this is the twist on this one, and these come in different strengths. They generally come in stops, or how many stops of light that they block. And the reason you might want to use one of these, if you want to sometimes use a lens opening that is larger than the bright light allows. Let's say you would like to use a lens opening of like f2.8, but it's a bright sunny day, and that is outside your camera's ability to adjust for that. You could use a neutral density filter. And if you use a large lens opening, then you're able to make the background and the foreground go out of focus, and just your subject, just your model, your family, or your family portrait, just those people then could be sharp, and any details in the background or details in the foreground would be gently out of focus and blurry, so they would draw more attention to the people in your pictures. All right, so that's why you might want one of these. Now, this is from Aurora Aperture, as I explained. And here's the difference on this thing is that it's a variable neutral density. So what they do is they put like two polarizers together, and as you rotate one polarizer against the other on its axis, it gives a continuously darkening effect. So here, instead of just having a polarizer that has 2 stops or 4 stops or 3 stops of control, here you have one that's variable. This is what would be, and you can be a variable from an ND16 to an ND2000. And so that's a 6-stop range, and infinitely variable in between that. So that's pretty handy. Now, these, I think, I have heard that these are more useful for video guys rather than stills. Sometimes these can cause polarized light effects where you might see a darkening on one corner of the blue sky. There might be a color shift. in certain areas. So I haven't seen these yet, so hopefully these will be really awesome. But certainly if you use a lot of neutral density filters, having a variable one could be extremely handy, something that you might really be able to use quite a bit of. All right, up next, how many people use Lightroom? Raise your hands. Oh, you don't have to raise your hand if you're driving and listening to this. A lot of people use Lightroom. A lot of photographers do. And for good reason. Lightroom is kind of a companion to Photoshop. And when you take digital images, we have certain challenges. We want to keep track of those images. We want to be able to find them, for example, particularly as you photograph more and more weddings and more portraits. It becomes difficult to keep track of where everything is. And so Lightroom is very good at doing that, but also Lightroom allows you to do a lot of adjustments. You can adjust for tonal range and color balance and a plethora of things that you can do in Lightroom. The only thing you can't really do in Lightroom is you can't move pixels around where you can't composite very easily. So it'd be hard to take one person's head from a group shot and put it into another shot. That would be something you'd more do in Photoshop. So Lightroom's got a version now that is for iOS. If you have an Apple phone, for example, and also an Android phone. So there's versions for both. Lightroom comes on both different platforms. And so the latest news here from Lightroom is that, and we've been talking about this from time to time, is that Lightroom on their mobile apps now support RAW files, because many of the new smartphone cameras shoot in the .dng or the RAW format. And so now you can use Lightroom on your smartphone. You have it right there. It's a very good implementation of it, designed to work with the limitations of a smaller screen. So anyway, you can use that, and you can take pictures directly from Lightroom, and then it captures the DNG format and lets you work on it. Now, the DNG RAW format, we use those because they have a lot more adjustment. When you shoot with a RAW file, you have the ability to manipulate the highlights, shadows. You have a lot of controls in manipulating the image that you don't have once the camera decides it's in a JPEG format. It already has made a bunch of those decisions for you. It might have been good decisions, but nonetheless, you can't go back and change them as well as you could from a RAW file. So if you think you might need to do some work on the file in a computer program like Lightroom or Photoshop, DNG or RAW file is the way to go. And Lightroom also has a dehaze tool in it, which is quite nice. The latest versions of Lightroom allow you to adjust a haze and fog in an image. So you can, if there's a little bit of a haze when you took the picture, you could remove it, or if maybe you want to put a little haze in there to give it some atmosphere as well, you could do that too. So this version is for mobile devices, and it helps you take and process pictures in the RAW format, assuming your camera phone is capable of doing that. And of course, this is at a very competitive price. It's free, so you can't beat that. That's Lightroom for mobile, and this is their 2.0 version, which supports RAW format. So you can take lots of pictures, manipulate them quite a bit, adjust the highlights, the contrast, color balance, white balance, lots of stuff you can do from a RAW file. It'd be very difficult to do from a file that was a JPEG. And coming up next, we have a plugin. Now, this is a plugin if you have a program like Photoshop, or there's other programs which are compatible, which use Photoshop plugins. Corel, Photo Paint. There's a bunch of them now that are compatible with the Photoshop plugin format. And this is a very unique plugin. This is one from a website which is 4n6site.com. And I'll link to this in the show notes if you want to know where these things are and you can't remember. Just go to coolphototools.com/podcasts or click on the podcast link, and this will take you down. Scroll down to the show notes, and you can click right on these links and go right to these things we're talking about. So this is what we call the Color Deconvolution plugin, Color Deconvolution. And so Color Deconvolution from their website is a plugin that uses a sophisticated algorithm in 3D color space to separate or remove color components. Now that's that's kind of interesting because that can have forensic uses as well. And they cite some examples here where you can see on this they've got maybe inks from two different ballpoint pens, and just slightly enough different color, but when you look at it before, you can't really make out that there's any color difference there. And then as you click on it, it shows you the results of the plugin, and you can very clearly make out the text that was written in a slightly different color pen. Now they have uses for photographers. For example, if you do, how many people, come on, raise your hands. No, not if you're driving, but if you're sitting in front of your screen at home, you could raise your hand. Do you do retouching? Do you offer that maybe to your clients where you retouch or restore old photographs? That's something I used to do a lot. People would bring in photographs in various states of disrepair. You know, they'd be in the closet or the attic for 50, 60, 80, 100 years. And suddenly, you know, there would be an interest in genealogy or where the family came from. And so they'd be looking through all these photos, and many of them weren't stored properly. It was a generation and a couple generations maybe didn't care or lost track of them, didn't know what they were, or just sometimes age itself. And one of the things that can happen in a photograph is what we're looking at here on screen. This is called silvering or mirroring. And what happens is the silver that is in a print, if it's not dissolved out properly in the fixing solution, it can rise to the top of the photograph and give kind of a diffused or a mirrored or a milky look to the black and white image. We're talking old photographs here generally. You know, these are ones that are 100 years old or more. And so this mirroring is very hard to retouch out because it destroys the areas that should be black in the image have this reflectivity. And so this particular plugin, this deconvolution plugin here, can get rid of those. And so if we take a look at some of these examples here, those of you that are looking at the video version, you can see that it does a very nice job of removing that mirroring or silvering that you can then proceed with the restoration and make the things look really good. Also, faded documents they show an example of here. You can click on that and you can read the ink that doesn't really, it's so faded it doesn't, the page is yellowed and it's kind of hard to read. But by using this plugin, you can make the contrast really come out on there. And they show a couple other examples here, which I'll click on real quickly. So you want to go to this site, the number 4, the letter N, the number 6, and then site.com, and look for the convolution plugin. Very, very useful, and the price is right on this one. Free. Yeah, no charge to get started with that particular plugin. That's the color deconvolution plugin. Up next, our good buddies at topazlabs.com have a new version of one of my favorite plugins, which is Topaz Denoise. Now, if you take pictures in low light, if you use high ISO to get your pictures up there where they are usable, and this would be in a low light situation, maybe you can't use a flash, you don't have a flash, or it's too far away for you to use a flash, then typically you're going to have an image that has noise on it. And a noise image, you know, when you see noise from a camera, it is often looks very, you see little grains of speckled colors. And also the blacks aren't really black, they're just kind of a muddy blue. And by using a plugin like Topaz Denoise, now the upgrade with Topaz Denoise now, it's in version 6, and the advantage here is it is now standalone. So you don't need to use Photoshop anymore. You don't want to use Photoshop, or maybe have some other program. You can use Topaz Denoise completely by itself to mitigate any of those noise or grain issues from high ISO or shooting in extreme low light conditions. Topaz Denoise is one of my favorite because it really works, and it can be very powerful. If you have some images that are extremely noisy, Topaz Denoise really can make short work of it. Now, they do have a free trial, so you can download it from topazlabs.com. Definitely something you ought to do if you have any kind of noise issues with your images at all. Well, there's been lots of announcements here of late from the Mobile Phone Congress, because all the mobile phone show has been underway. And so a lot of the manufacturers of smartphones, camera phones, smartphones that have cameras, have been making announcements as well. And Samsung, which makes a lot of different smartphones, Samsung makes a ton of stuff, they introduced a new camera. And they are trying to kind of pair it with, this type of camera that it is, this is similar to the LG we talked about last week. Also, the Ricoh Theta cameras that are photospheres. These take pictures that are 360 degrees all the way around. And so this camera looks like kind of like a golf ball with two lenses on opposite sides. And so this is how they're going to take two fisheye lenses. The software stitches them together. Then you get a photosphere for virtual reality that you can look at with things like Google Cardboard, or you can see them on Facebook or YouTube. All those support the 360 degree movies as well. But here's why Samsung's in on this, is because you could need a smartphone to help you see what the heck you're looking at with these cameras. There's no viewfinder on here, and they're going to shoot complete all the way around, top to bottom, side to side, complete 360 degree. So these cameras need a way for you to be able to aim them. And that is where your smartphone comes in. They will wirelessly connect to these cameras. You can use your smartphone to compose the image and then also to look at it after you've taken the image. And that's a connection with the phone manufacturers in these type of cameras in this case. So this is the Samsung Gear 360, and this is certified dust and water resistant, and it has a little stand for it. You can mount it to different things, and it connects with Wi-Fi to your smartphone camera. And they show some examples here on their website of various scenes where you've got, and these are the 360 degrees, so you can reach in there with your mouse and you can pull them around to change the angle of view. These are fun to look at. So now you'll be able to shoot them yourself. You can already do this if you have the Ricoh Theta S particularly. Also, this one's coming out. The Samsung Gear 360 is able to do this as well. So some pretty interesting 360 cameras. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of these. These are something that the manufacturers certainly are turning out in droves, and if they keep the price reasonably affordable, I think they'll be a very popular camera. Maybe coming up for this holiday season, that'll be the go-to gift will be the Photosphere camera. Could be. I don't know. What's up next? Well, as you may have discovered if you're tuning in late, Rhonda Spencer is still on vacation this week, and she will be returning next week with lots of exciting stories and photos that she has probably taken. I'm sure she has her camera with her. All right, so next we're going to talk about, this is on from Amazon's website, and this is the Pentax K1 full-frame DSLR camera body. Pentax has finally gotten around to making a full-frame digital camera, and it has a 36 megapixel sensor. So that's no slouch. It's taken a very, very large image, and it is a good price point too. If you take a look at what the comparable Nikons have that have the 36 megapixel sensor, the Pentax K1 at about $1,796 is considerably less. I think by as much as like $500 or more dollars, so quite a bit less money. Now, it also has some unique features. It has some lights on the back that light up the controls where you can see at night. It's got an articulating finder that comes out at some unusual angles. And this is a big, unapologetically big camera. This is, if you need to take full frame images, this could be the camera for you. Now, the only downside that I can think of in purchasing this camera right now is that Pentax doesn't have very many lenses available for it. So if you need specialty lenses, this might not be the camera to start with. If you can find something that's in their lineup right away, then it certainly is a good price. And I believe Ricoh owns Pentax. Ricoh, very good camera manufacturer. I don't see any issues with owning this camera. There's a lot of Pentax shooters out there. Now, if you do have some Pentax lenses from their crop sensor cameras, you can use them with this camera at a reduced sensor size. The sensor does reduce to let you use those lenses. So that's a good option too. So if you've been thinking about a full frame camera and you're in the Pentax ecosystem, these are now available. Well, Canon's been working on cameras too, and they've come out with their EOS 1DX Mark II, and this is a camera that is really it's aimed at the working sports professional, I think, primarily. This is at about $6,000 in the price point, and it has up to 14 frames per second. Even maybe can go 16 frames per second in live view mode. It's got tons of pro features on here that's a lot of money for a camera, and it's a 20.2 megapixel full frame, in which for most sport event action photographers, 20 megapixels is plenty. Probably don't need more than that, especially if you know what you're doing or you're in situations where you don't have to crop. 20 megapixels is just fine. So, if you're looking to upgrade your camera for that, check out that one, the EOS 1DX Mark II from Canon. And Canon has been prolific here with lots of cameras. They haven't come up with the perfect one for me yet. I'm thinking, there's a lot of different cameras that they make, but it's like they haven't come up with the J. Piersdorf special feature set. Now, I'm a Canon shooter and I have a 5D Mark III, but I also have Sony's too. So, I'm going to buy whatever camera suits my needs for the time, as you should. You should not be stuck to a brand. You should buy one that has the capabilities. Of course, the difficulty is when you own a lot of their lenses already, then you are kind of stuck in that ecosystem because you don't want to go out and buy all new lenses all over again. All right, so one more Canon camera coming up here. This is the EOS 80D E0S 80D DSLR, and this one's a little more affordable at about $1,200 from the Canon store. Now the 80D replaces the 70D. And isn't it? And Rhonda and I talk about this as far as could we just have some cool camera names, just like we do hurricanes. Come up with instead of cameras, it should be like we could pass a law that says cameras must be named something that doesn't have a bunch of letters and numbers in it to avoid confusion. Because so here's the 80D, and Nikon has a D80. Really, you guys? What is the point of that? I'm completely baffled by that. If I owned the Zoo, I would be naming these cameras something, more memorable in a heartbeat. At least like Google does with their operating systems or Androids. They have Marshmallow and they name them after sweets. Maybe we could do that. We could have, the Canon Kit Kat or, the Nikon, I don't know. But something different than all this numbering system. This drives you mad. If you've been in the industry for a few years, you're like, okay, here we go again. Which camera is this? So, and I think it confuses consumers to the point where they might not even know that that there's a new one out that they should be buying or that is available to them because they're so confused by the numbering system. It's just awful. You guys got to change this. Anyway, back to the 80D. That we're looking at here. So if you have a 70D, this is the new model. It's about that simple. There's a few new bells and whistles, but pretty much, that's what it's about. It's about the latest and greatest, and there isn't again not a ton of new features on here that we're looking at now. The 70D came out like in 2013, I think. So. This one's got more megapixel. The pixel count's up to 24. Well, that's a good, that's good. Is it worth, coming up from a 20 megapixel? Probably not. Interesting thing about the 70D and the 80D DSLRs from Canon is they're very popular with video bloggers or with people that want to use their DSLRs for video because they're one of the Canon cameras that can autofocus while you're shooting video. Many of them cannot. They rely on manual focus. You have to do the focus while you're shooting. This one will actually autofocus. So if you're like a video blogger, you can get in front of the camera and it focuses on you as you move around, and it lets you use the lenses that have large lens openings or wide apertures so that you can actually get in there and have a very shallow depth of field. You can make the backgrounds go out of focus because you have an APS-C size sensor with that. So these really are good cameras, but I think that really is something that really is important for this particular model. The video people, the video bloggers really, really like this image. Now I'm looking right here at the recording system and the image format here, and the thing that I'm not seeing. What am I not seeing here, folks? Where's 4K? Is this one shooting 4K? No, there's no 4K video on here. Canon, really? I'm surprised. I think not that 4K is something that we all need to have right at the moment, but it's clearly it's easy to add. So why wouldn't you do that? It reminds me of Polaroid back in the day. When Polaroid used to come up with that, they'd put one new little feature and they'd come out with a new model, and then they'd make a new model and it'd have just one feature. Now they had about 30 things they could have done, but only would do one feature at a time. I'm seeing Sony eat your lunch on this. Sony's new little mirrorless camera has 4K. They've got a bunch of stuff out there. They're at a lower price point. If I ran the zoo, I think I'd be running this a little bit different. But as usual, nobody asked me. That's okay. I'm here. If anybody wants to ask me, you know where I am. CoolPhotoTools.com. All right. But don't get me started. Next up, we have a narrative clip wearable camera. This is from Amazon's Launchpad. Amazon has an area called Launchpad where they have stuff that's new and notable, new and noteworthy out there. And this is what we're looking at right now. It's just a little gray box, not very big, just a couple inches by a couple inches square, maybe a half inch thick. And you could attach it to put it on your person. You can clip it to your T-shirt, something like that. And this is a camera that you double tap on it, and it starts running, and it takes a 2-minute. It can make a video, or it can take a photo, like every minute. So the idea is that you have photos that you take all day long. Kind of as you go through things. You can remember all those moments that you might otherwise not. So it's kind of like it's shooting continuously all day long. It'll work all day long on a battery recharge. And then you can kind of go through and you can see video, or you can use it for stills. These are about $150 right now on here on Amazon. I'm not sure on this, whether this is a good thing or not. I don't know that I would use this. I don't know. It's kind of something really new. Of course, you can see your pictures on your smartphone or whatnot. You can, there's lots of ways to look at them. So the memory built in, you can take this, has 6,000 photo capacity. The battery lasts for 30 hours. Narrative clip wearable camera. I don't know. I'm not sure. Do we need that? I guess the market will have to decide that, whether that works or not. Here's an article. It was on MSN.com, and this one got my attention because it's talking about the Japan camera makers, and they are which is most all of them, and they're battling the smartphone onslaught. And in this particular article, they're talking about how, because we have and I talk about this too, we have cameras that built into our phones now, pretty good ones. And every time you get a new phone, every couple of years, the camera's even better. Takes better pictures in low light, takes really, really good images. And so here, in this particular article from MSN, they are talking about a rapid shift to picture-taking smartphones has torn into a camera sector dominated by Japanese firms, including Canon, Olympus, Sony, and Nikon. Much like digital cameras all but destroyed the market for photographic film years ago. Yes, that is true. Digital cameras did almost destroy the market for film. And almost is actually kind of debatable. It probably, you could say, well, it completely destroyed the market for film, other than as a very novel use on things. Anyway, so that's what's happened with our cameras here. So they're talking about what can these manufacturers do to keep from going out of business. And they're diversified, certainly. In this article, they talk about Canon using their SureShot digital cameras. They make sure that they have zoom lenses on them, as powerful zoom lenses, because that's one place they can really beat the smartphones. And I think, me as a smartphone user, I miss having a zoom lens. I tell you, I think that's not the best thing in the world. Some of the manufacturers have teamed up with rivals. They talk about Leica has teamed up with some of their rivals. They're from Germany. And Olympus, they are claiming, is pushing into medical sales, such as endoscopes, which are now selling more for Olympus than their cameras do. Canon has been doing this for years. Canon is very large, very diverse. They sell medical equipment and copiers and all kinds of stuff that's not specifically cameras. Fujifilm has really picked up Polaroid's absence from the market, and Fujifilm now makes these Instax cameras, which shoot instant pictures. And so that's been really successful for Fujifilm, particularly, I guess, in the Asian markets. There's starting to be a real resurgence of that, and you can get those cameras for around $140, so certainly affordable. And one other really interesting quote that I thought was in this article said that in 2011, 130 million cameras were sold globally. That's 2011. That's not that many years ago. 4 years later, that figure stood at just 47 million. From 130 million to 47 million. So this statistic, is kind of one of those where you could think of a couple of different things maybe causing that. And certainly, I think one of them is cameras have gotten so good. Once you've got a decent digital camera, and I wonder, for most people, how often do you use the camera with the zoom? Your digital camera, because you have one built into your smartphone. So how often do you take the PowerShot with you? Maybe you take it on vacation. What is that? 2, 3, 4 weeks a year that you're taking that camera with you. Maybe you get it out for a birthday party, special event. But mostly, you're probably relying on your smartphone. So how often do you need to replace that camera? Enthusiasts that listen to this show, Cool Photo Tools, we go through a lot of camera gear, so we're the cream of the crop for the camera manufacturers. We definitely do our bit to consume them. But just thinking that the average person probably doesn't replace that camera that often. Gets in a drawer, maybe doesn't go used, particularly now that smartphones have become so powerful in their cameras. Well, you know what time it is? Yes, it is about that time. We have completely talked through our entire session for this week. I hope we have had some things that were interesting to you and that maybe gave you some pause to consider or think about. And as always, you can always check our show notes. Anything that we've mentioned or talked about will be linked at coolphototools.com. Just click on the podcast, go to the episode you're listening to, and you can go scroll down. You'll see all the links to everything that we talked about. It makes it so convenient to find this stuff later. coolphototools.com. And also check in every day. I usually have something to say every day except Saturday or Sunday when I figure you're too busy to read what I've got to write. And that's, I write short. I'm not a big writer, so stuff doesn't, it's just a paragraph or two. And if I'm telling you about some new cool photo thing, I'm just going to send you to the place that gives you all the details rather than have to recreate the wheel. So I hope you appreciate that as well. And until next time, let us know how we're doing. We sure appreciate all of our listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you listen to us on iTunes, we appreciate a rating and a review there. Let us know how we're doing, what you're thinking. And as always, have a fantastic week. And we'll see you next week with Rhonda Spencer, back from vacation. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Cool Photo Tools podcast. Sign up for our mailing list at coolphototools.com. Got a question? Send an email or MP3 audio file to info@coolphototools.com. Thanks for listening.